All right. Today we're talking to Marv Honderd of Byron Center, Michigan. The interviewer is James Smither of Grand Valley State University. Mr. Honderd, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your own background? Where and when were you born, for instance?
Well, I was born basically right in Byron Center here, and I built a house there when I got married, about 2 blocks from here, and we're still in it yet.
All right.
And have no reason to move ever.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did your family do?
I had 4 children, and they all live, they touch me. Oh, there are 4 lots, so we all touch each other yet.
All right.
I can't get rid of them.
And what did your parents do, actually?
Well, my dad was a furniture cabinet maker in Grand Rapids. The furniture business was a big thing at that time. He liked wood. My grandpa was on a farm in Byron, miles east of here, and my dad didn't like farming. So my grandpa sold the farm, and my dad, he went in the factory like woodworking. He did the rest of his life.
Did he work for one company, or did he change a few times?
Mainly for John Whitcomb. Although in the meantime, he did leave there, and he had a milk route in Byron here for 12 years. Picked up milk by the farmers, the 10-gallon cans, and they just got to know all the people around here. And also, I forget now, he also had in Byron, he had the grocery store for 5 years on the corner here, 100 and Wasakma. Yeah.
Okay.
Then he went back to the furniture factory, and he liked that.
Right. Then, what do you remember about the Second World War? I mean, about how old were you when it ended? And
all I know is that my dad just missed it, and in between, I just missed it. He just, and I was a little bit too young then. But I'm a history nut, and I watched the Second World War, all the newsprints I could, and Gabriel Heater was a big a commentator at that time. We listened to him every I would follow it real close, the Second World War. Yeah, very, very close, yeah.
And when did you graduate from high school?
In 1945, Byron Center here.
What did you do then after you graduated?
Everybody says go to college. You don't know what for in them days, so I just did. I went to Calvin College for 2 years. And then what did I go for? I took mechanical drawing, because then I had that 2 weeks, I didn't like it. And then the doctor in Byron here, he said, if you go become a pharmacist, I'll give you all my business, Dr. Benign. So I changed to pre-med. So I had pre-med for 2 years at Calvin. Then I enlisted or signed up for school in Ferris. That was the big pharmacy school in Ferris. And then I was all ready to go, and I scratched my head, do I want to be a pharmacist or don't I? So you know what? I went to the furniture factory too, to Nichols and Cox. And I worked in the furniture factory for 3 years. Nichols and Cox, and also, I can't think of the other one now, yeah. Okay. In the factory in Byron, Godfrey Avenue, yeah.
Okay, and then how did you wind up in the military?
Well, I was going to get drafted.
Okay.
And I knew what the color of the draft envelope was. I lived on a farm here with all these 20 acres around here. It was ours. And I looked in there, it was a brown envelope, and I knew it was a draft notice. And I knew it was for me, so I slammed it shut, and I said, I got some college here. Why not enlist? So I did. So I enlisted. I said, I want to go in the Air Force. I didn't want to get shot at. And then, how'd that go again? Yeah, and I said, well, I'm going to sign up for pilot training too. What the heck, never make it in the world. But anyway, I had to go in the Air Force, and they put every Air Force guy at that time, and even now you got to take your basic in Lackland Air Force Base in Texas, everyone, no matter what. And I went through my basic training there. And basically what you're learning in the march, and to take orders and all that stuff, and they give you a uniform and all that stuff. And
how long was the basic training?
My basic training was 6 weeks, like everybody else's. But then, they said, what do you want to do? You fill out a blank. They said, you've got a good radio gun here, you can do what you want. And I said, well, I'll go to radio school, I guess. So they put me up in radio school near some Air Force base near Chicago. I was ready to go, And then all of a sudden, the school didn't have any room for me for a while, so they put me basic a second time, went through it twice. Didn't want to do me. Then all of a sudden, it came up on the billboard, Marvin Honderd report for duty in Columbus, Mississippi for flight training. It blew me away. So they put me on the train. First time I had a train with a Pullman. Slept on it at night. It was really something. And we woke up in the morning, some rail yards there, and the engine was going, of course. But anyway, with a truck, they brought us to Columbus Air Force Base in Mississippi. And we were the first class there, so it was all weeds and it was all everything unpainted, and we were the first class there. So first couple weeks we pulled weeds and painted and everything else to get things rolling.
Was the base sort of left over from World War II?
Yeah, leftover base, yeah. It was Air Force Base, yeah.
What kind of impression did Mississippi make on you? Did you seem different
very
from home?
much, very much. Yeah, it was deep south, I'll tell you that, yeah. And even when I flew the T6, which was a trainer at that time, it was the trainer, and we had our training out. We took off for our main base, went out to a cotton field out in the Moonies, and then in between the cotton field was a pasture, and we practiced our planes on the pasture, and all the people picking cotton, they were looking at us, and watching, That left a big impression on me. And one time too, we had to we had our uniforms on, and they were having a parade in Columbus, Mississippi, right down the middle of the street. And we were all, we looked pretty sharp, our uniforms on. I had a band in front of us, and all of a sudden, the band played Dixie, and people went absolutely nuts. I never ever forget that. They just went crazy. And that's another big impression I got from Mississippi. Yeah, they're still fighting the war yet.
Okay. Tell us a little bit more about the flight training experience. What was that like for you?
Well, that was just a primary flight over there, and we had ground school in the morning, and in the afternoon we flew. And the next day we had ground school in the morning, again to learn about the engine and about airfoils and all this stuff. And in the afternoon we went with our instructor. Our plane was a two-seater, instructor in the back seat, and we were up in the front. And after a while, he took it first, and later on he let you take it, and in the end, and slowly on you were doing the whole thing, with an instructor.
Had you ever been in an airplane before?
No.
So what was that like, first time to go up it?
Well, them old trainers were so terrible noisy, I couldn't believe it. Although we had a helmet on, that helped some, but it was kind of a thrill. Yeah, especially over the old cotton fields out there, Yeah, it was a thrill. Yeah, no, I'd been in plane before. No.
Okay, so how long were you in Columbus then? 6
months, and then we transferred to, that was another base in Lubbock, Texas, Priest Air Force Base, and we learned this. We had the old T6s again. They were supposed to be in the T-28, which is more advanced, but I didn't have enough of them, so we did our advanced in T6 again. Then we learned a lot about instrument training and acrobatics and all that kind of stuff. And we went on longer flights to different towns to learn about, the different airfields and the towers and how you call in for instructions to land, and learned a lot of weather. And we had a hood in the front seat, and they put it over the top of you so you couldn't see nothing, and instructors in the back. You had to learn flying instruments, that way. Yeah, and that's called the primary, no, that was advanced training, yeah, right. In the propeller plane, yeah. Yeah. That was another 6 months.
And so what do you do after that round of training?
Then we were done with that, and then they had a big meeting there. I know all of the pilots were there, and they had a guy up in the front, and he was reading off, you go to here, and everybody seemed like wanted to be a fighter pilot, and I didn't. I wanted to be in transport. I wanted to get shot at.
Right.
And but then they finally got to meet Mr. Honderd. I was a lieutenant at that time. I got ahead of my wings. You will be a fighter pilot. You got to be kidding. And then all the guys around there, hey, I'll trade with you. I'll trade you. I said, okay, I'll trade you. So I went to the guy in front. Nope, that was a cotton deal. I had to be. They no trading. So then I got transferred to Wichita Falls, Kansas, to learn to fly jets. Then we started out in jets of the F-80. They were, but the F-80 also had a plane that called a T-33. It had two seats in, a seat in the front and the back, and an instructor in the back, and you up in front. That's how you learn to fly first, in jets. And what a difference. Quiet, fast, and then T-6s were tail draggers, the tail on the back, and these are the thrust stick landing gear. You landed this way. And It was very much different and faster, and it was kind of thrilling. Yeah.
Okay. And how long did that round of training last?
That only lasted 6 weeks. And then we got transferred to Las Vegas, Nevada for 6 months, and in jets also. But then we went to the advanced F-86 fighter plane. That was the first supersonic jet with swept-back wings, and it was really a slick plane. And that didn't have a double seat, so you just got in it and flew it. You didn't have no instructor.
Okay. And is that the plane that you would actually fly into combat?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it had 6 50 caliber machine guns on it, and it was supersonic.
Okay. And did they train you in sort of aerial tactics? I mean, was there a kind of a doctrine that you had to follow? How were you trained to approach flying into combat?
That was all about there, yeah. A lot of air-to-air combat, a lot of we had dive bombings, and we had a bomber pulled a target, a rag we called it, and we'd go and trail the 4 of us, and we tried to get as many bullets in there as you could. Every bullet was a different color. They had dipped in paint. And then we get all done. The bomb would drop that, we called it the rag, at Las Vegas airplane, and we'd run out there in the field and count the number of colors. And one time we're doing that, there was the instructor and three of us pilots. Now, the first one, he shot the instructor down. He shot him down. He got they call it target fixation. And then he had to bail out. And of course, they washed him out, and he's gone. Instructor didn't like very good either.
Okay. At what point, now, did you go from this round of training to Korea, or were there more stages in between?
That we got a lot of training here in Las Vegas, and then we went to Korea. Yeah.
And when was that in terms of month and year?
It was about it was in 53.
Okay.
I know that 1953. I don't know the exact month. Yeah. I remember though that going to Korea, we went there again in propeller planes, and it was 12 hours from San Francisco to Hawaiian Islands. We got off there, stretch our legs. Then we got another 12 hours to Wake Island, got off there, stretch our legs. Another 12 hours to Tokyo. Got there, I can't imagine how long it took with the propeller planes. Yeah. And I was in Tokyo about 2 weeks to get used to the Japanese people a bit, The short people in the low doorways in the bathroom. I'll tell you how they work. Oh.
What condition was Tokyo in at the time you were there? Because this is
it was all scaffolds. Every one of the big buildings, we had bombed it tremendously, and it still was every big tall building, and the scaffolds are all made of bamboo. Everywhere you look, the bamboo scaffolds. Yeah, it was really, But I turned to Japanese people, I got to like them. They were very family orientated. Very family orientated. I got to really like them. Yeah. I got to change my mind on them. We hate them, so Second World War,
Right.
Yeah, that was a good lesson for me.
And so by the time when you're in Japan or earlier, were you told very much about what you might come up against in terms of aerial combat and things? Were they kind of training you to deal with the North Koreans or Chinese or Russians? Yeah,
we were pretty well versed on that. Yeah, and I know we were going into some dogfighting. I knew we had we always in high cover with F-86, and we were protecting our fighter bombers. They were bombing near the Yellow River, in the northern part of North Korea, to try to keep troops away from the DMZ, which wasn't DMZ yet, it was just front line.
Right.
And then we tangled with them quite often, and we weren't there, they couldn't operate because they get shot down. So we had to keep them, the MiGs. And then we always went up. I'm jumping the gun, and I went to Korea.
That's okay.
To Seoul, which was camp was right by Seoul. My first month and a half, we had just practice runs to get used to what Korea looked like and what it's going to be like in combat. And we go about halfway into Korea before the MiGs got us and come back again. And after a while, it become time to say, hey, this is it.
At this point, were the North Koreans, or the people who were actually flying their planes, were they attacking the American lines at all, or attacking Seoul, or did they mostly stay back for defense?
No. The only attack we had that time at Kimpo was 10 miles above Seoul. That was our air base. And the bad check Charlie came over all the time. A small little play after dark. He dropped his hand grenades, and you never could shoot him down. And the aircraft, they call it aircraft, just all over. The trace, you talk about fireworks, you'll see that once. They never could hit him. And we jumped in the trench all the time, at night, and that only happened maybe a dozen times. But then we didn't want to have a grenade on our tent.
Okay. Can you describe the first time you came into contact with the enemy in the air?
Yeah, the first time I see them, but they didn't attack us. Our jets, we could get up to 45,000 feet, which is 9 miles high. You can't see us from the ground in.
Right.
And then they could get to 50,000 feet, the MiGs could. And they were a little faster than we were, but we had better armament. And then they had 2 23 millimeter guns and a cannon, and we had 6 50 caliber machine guns, which were quite, and they were kind of scared of us because we had quite a good ratio, on them with most of it hit and run from the top, and then we had for protecting our bombers down below, and we were, a lot of times you see the black ack stuff all around you, say, boy, that's pretty. But you're young, hey, nothing's going to happen to you, Man, that's pretty. But you look back now, my goodness, what did they do?
Okay. Did you have a specific job or assignment within your unit? The unit as a whole is protecting the fighter bombers down below. But was there any differentiation beyond that? Did different pilots do different things?
Well, the thing, at that time, I was just a lowly first lieutenant. And all the captains and the majors, they wanted to, every plane flight is 2 planes. You got the leader and you got your wingman. And every flight, us lowly first lieutenants had to be, we call it the wingman.
Okay.
They did all the shooting. They got all the glory. And we got the one to get shot at.
So what was your job then? I mean, what did a wingman
Protecting the shooter. And then he had to protect keep the MiGs away from our dive bombers down on the ground. We're dropping in the bombs.
So what would you do that would protect the pilot you were teaming
I got to
with?
watch from behind, so nobody gets a MiG don't get behind him. He's always got to watch behind me that a MiG don't get me either. They're not going to shoot you down unless they get behind you. You can't see them coming. See.
And so how would you keep them from getting behind you or behind the other fellow?
Well, if they get too close, you try to do a turn real tight. Because in a turn like 2 planes, they can't get a bead on you.
Right.
And then at that height too, a turning takes 30 miles because the air's so thin.
Right.
And we went up. We're in action all the time, by the way. Up and down. So you try to make a tight enough turn that he'd break off or he'd go into a spin. And many times we went to a spin too. Many times you spin all the way down to 20,000 feet before you can pull out of it again because the air is too thin up there.
Physically, what's that like? I mean, if you're spinning down 30,000 feet?
You just, a lot of times you're blacked out too, because you pull G's like that, and I was blacked out many times. You can, your functions, your brain works good, but you can't see nothing. You're blacked out as can be, and you just fall. And pretty soon you come to again, and with your eyes, and you wait till, and then you see the altimeter going down like that, down, and you can't, just let it go. And until it gets to 20,000 feet, then you start taking corrective action to get your plane under control again, and go back up again.
Were your planes any more maneuverable than the MiGs, or did they do any of this any better than
they
did?
were about the same. Our pilots, we were trained better. And when I left, we had a 10-to-1 ratio, on kills, And they were kind of scared. We turned out later on, a few of the pilots were really good, and it turned out they were Russian pilots. And we didn't know until after the war, they admitted it, And the funny part is, we always went to the Yellow River. That's where all the action was.
Right.
You can see it down there, and across the Yellow River was Manchuria. You can see all the bases down there. You see the airplanes, and they could come up there and attack you and run back down across it, and we couldn't go across the river. And they can get at you, and you can't get at them. That's kind of, and sometimes, I better not say what really happened because it might get on it. But, our radar from at home could only watch us fly, so we wouldn't get across the river, but it couldn't see the lower 10,000 feet. Sometimes the pilot get mad, and they go below the radar to go across the river, and back up again. He kind of gets you after a while. They get at you and shoot at you. You can't. A lot of things went on, that people don't know about yet.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
That ain't going to be in the press, no, of course. Nothing like that.
It was 50-some years ago, so odds are it won't get us into that much trouble.
Okay, yeah.
But it's also important to be aware of what actually happens when you're forced to follow a certain set of rules that don't make sense in a military sense. They do in a political sense. You don't want a nuclear war, but it's got to be very difficult to be a pilot operating in those circumstances, and you know what you could do right there and what you couldn't. Right. So that's probably natural enough.
I'm kind of kidding. But I got a few holes in plane, but I never got shot down. I had a couple times come in crippled.
How many missions did you fly?
When you get over there, we had to fly 100. And then I got in the 60s, and then they made a rule that anybody that was married, and you did 70, you could come home. And I said, boy, I think I'd rather be home than a dead hero, I thought, because it was getting pretty hot at times. So I opted and went home. 70 missions. Yeah.
Okay. So at the time then that you joined the military, you were already married. What did your wife think of all of this?
Well, she knew it ahead of time when I was, I signed up. And I couldn't get married till I got my wings. I had to be in a whole year first, till you got your wings, then you get married, and then the action started, Yeah. One thing too, I can tell you about, we always went up on auction all the time. And I had a couple times, 3 times that you're under pressurization and you're 18,000 feet in your cockpit, and I lost my pressurization. That knocks you out too. You can't believe it. And all the air comes out all over you, you can't talk. And your microphone's in front of you, that far from you, all you can do is, you can't even, airways, talk does not go that, no.
Okay. Well, you obviously survived all of that. I mean, were there accidents that were produced by this? Did people wind up crashing if they didn't wake up?
What's that?
Well, were there people who didn't wake up in time and wound up crashing? I mean, did you have accidents because of this kind of thing?
I'm not sure if it was they were shot or if it was just because they were out of auction too long. We had G-suits on too, that the more G's you pulled, it blew up with air. You got tight to keep your blood, above your stomach, Yeah. I know one time I came back and a jet plane engine, am I talking too much?
No.
It's got all rotors in the back of that, they call them blades. And I don't know whether they got shot or what, there was a hole in the plane, but the rotor, a couple of them were gone, and it vibrated so bad, and I had no power at all, nothing. And then, except it just idled, and no control over the power. And then I had to get back, and I had to tell my wingman I had to go like that, And I had to get back, and Korea is 75 miles wide, and this is about 400 miles long. And so halfway back, on each side of the peninsula was our Navy. And then on the Yellow Sea side, there was an island of Chodo. And they had the Dumbos there, that them flying airplanes, that land in the water, and helicopters. So you get halfway back, you could bail out and they could pick you up. And at one time in particular, I had no power, and I had 15,000 feet when I got back. And they said, why didn't you bail out and we'll pick you up? And I had 100 miles to go back home to base yet. And boy, is that hard to bail out when and you see the plane running yet. And, I said, I'm going to try to make it back, see if I can coast. Because a jet has got a 16-to-1 glide ratio. And then I started figuring 100 miles and 50,000 feet. And by golly, I believe I'm going to try it. Well, they say if you do go back, stay along the coast in the Yellow Sea, far enough out that them North Koreans, they used to come out with small boats and come and pick up them pilots, They love to get the pilots. I said, I'll do that. And by golly, I got back with just enough altitude to make a landing.
Wow.
Yeah, I saved $1 million in a plane anyway.
Well, there you go.
Plus, I got to eat at the officers' club at night again. Yeah. And so many things happen you don't think about that. I talk about now all of a sudden.
Right.
So many things happen. Unbelievable.
Yeah. What was it like living on the base at Kimpo? I mean, what kind of experiences did you have there?
You mean in Korea?
Yeah.
We basically had it pretty good. All I remember in breakfast, they had masses of scrambled eggs and tons of bacon. You go through the mess before every morning. We went through that, and then coffee. And then we always had a briefing every morning, what our mission was going to be. And they'd tell you what plane you had. My plane was Flying Dutchman, they had it written on there, But we don't always fly our own plane. And then in some days you didn't have a mission. Some day you sat on alert. In every mission that was up there, we had 8 planes on alert there, sitting there. And we were listening to the action all the time on our radio. And if they needed help, they called for help, and we would fly up there quick. And we had to be in the air in 4 minutes and get up there and help them get back. Sometimes they had a MiG tack in the back, and they couldn't get rid of them, And some they didn't think of, or they run out of fuel too, and they,
So were your missions pretty much always attacking the supply lines toward the Yalu, or did you do any more direct combat support?
No, I didn't. Our plane wasn't made for direct combat. No, we had a lot of machine guns on, but ours was just protect the fighter bombers. But we went down there a lot of times right with them and watched the bomb drop, And
were the fighter bombers?
They dropped the bombs.
But were they, I guess what I'm asking is, were their missions ones that tended to always go up to the Yalu, or were they flying some missions that were attacking the Chinese front lines?
No, they were only attacking the troops and attacking the river down there and attacking, and they didn't go high either. They probably 15,000 feet they went down there, But that was their only mission,
Did you get much information on what was going on the ground, or was there not much going on the ground at that time?
Well, we had them pushed back a long ways, and they were not, they had where DMZ is now, the line was there, but there was really no action there.
Yeah.
All the action was way back towards Manchuria. And we were scared to death that China might come in and again and jump in there, and that's why we didn't want to go across the river and antagonize the Chinese either. Kind of a political thing that day. The Korean War was almost a 5-year deal. And at one time the Chinese came through, and they took the whole peninsula except a little Busan triangle, until MacArthur landed at Incheon and got behind them, scared the death out of them, and then they went back again.
Yeah. And I think in terms of the history of the war, I mean, the North Koreans did that, and MacArthur beat them back, and it was when they chased them, when they went north from Incheon, that was when the Chinese army comes over the border, and you get all of that.
Right.
And by the time you're there, the front is fairly well stabilized,
Yeah.
and they're just trying to figure out how long this thing is going to drag on before they do something.
Right. Yeah.
But in the meantime, they're sending everybody out, and you're getting shot at.
Right, exactly, and the Air Force was hot and heavy,
Did you get to see much of Korea itself, or Seoul, or the people there?
Yeah, I did. I love history. I used to go out in the boonies, put my own clothes on. I got pictures of it on that tape. I don't know if you see the tape or not that I made. But I'd go out in the rice paddies and talk with the people there, and I went to Seoul, and I did that. And then in Seoul, I hated to go in there because Seoul at that time was 1 million people, supposedly. There was not one building that wasn't burned out or burned out, not one. So you go in there, and all them little kids, them orphans, they grab you by the legs, and they grab you, and it's so bad to want to, not to leave, and they just made you cry. So I didn't go to Seoul very often because it was sickening. Yeah, I know I did go out in the country, and I watched. I know one time too they were going to make our airport longer there, and so they had to go right to a Korean cemetery. The Korean cemetery, they're all big mounds, and the people there, they were digging them up, and they were getting the bodies out of there, and they were putting water in and drinking it. So it was the ancestors, they have part of the ancestry, No, I went into the countryside a lot,
Did you meet many people who could speak any English that you could talk to? Or
no, I couldn't talk with them. No.
So what would you do? You just looked around?
Yeah, I just looked around, and I took a lot of pictures. Yeah.
And how were most of the people out in the countryside living, or what kind of living conditions did they have?
Well, out in the country, just I call grass shack, made out of flax and stuff like that, and the roof, and now you didn't want to before it was out there, Yeah, and some of them made caves, Oh yeah, I got pictures of it. Yeah.
And during what time of year were you there? Because if you're
I was there one whole year.
Okay.
And I would have to say that the weather was exactly like Byron Center. The winters are the same, and the summers are the same. And I think we're in the same parallel too, pretty much.
Pretty close.
Yeah, I had to say exactly the same. Yeah.
Okay. Let's go now in your story. You've kind of gotten us to the point where you've flown your missions, and you've basically, I guess, requested to leave, or you played the marriage card or whatever, and you can leave. What then did you do after you left Korea?
Okay, I left Korea, and I want to tell you a little story here, and then Louis Kirkster, he signed up to go in the Army the same time I enlisted, and he, from Byron too, and he went in the Army, he went to Korea, and they put him in front lines, and the fourth day, he got captured. He was a prisoner of war for 4 years. And he got back out the same day about that I got back to Byron and say, hey, we're going to celebrate this. So we went fishing to Swan Lake in Elegant, and with rowboat, and we went, didn't catch a single fish, but that's the best fishing trip we ever had. We were there again. We went, signed up together, kind of, and came back again. Made it, yeah.
What kind of shape was he in by the
Terrible.
time? Yeah.
He had to go back to the military hospital again. He was skin and bones. Now, he just about died many times. Yeah, it was awful. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you, were you still in the Air Force at that point when you left? I mean, did you stay on longer?
No, see, and then, and then when I got back from Korea, and I had 2 years yet on my contract, he said, where do you want to go? Well, I said, I don't know, maybe Midwest, because I'm Grand Rapids, He said, how does Dayton, Ohio sound? Right, Patterson. I said, wonderful. Okay. That's the primary base of the whole Air Force, where all the generals are, and all the B-36s and all that's what all goes on, I said, wonderful. Okay, they sent me there, and then I had to fly F-86s again, but it was the advanced model. This one had the radar nose on, you could see 50 miles away, and they had the afterburner on, and a parachute in the tail, and we had 36 rockets instead of machine guns. Each one could destroy a bomber, and that was an Air Defense Command. And then there again, they were brand new too. They just broke out, and we had to get as many hours we could on them just to get all the bugs out of them.
Right.
So every time we came back in, they had to write out a sheet what was wrong with it, and then they were fixing it up, But basically, and also about every other day we sat on alert too for 4 hours, even at night. And we had to be up in the air in 4 minutes, even when you slept there. They call it, we were learning to be air alert, and because basically I know a Cold War was going on in Russia, and the bombers at that time were just as fast as fighters. And if you got behind a bomb, you never catch them. So the only way you could shoot a bomber down, you had to be vectored by a radar ahead of them, so you got to meet them. Right. And we were practicing that all the time on our bombers. And then we'd be moved over to Alaska or Newfoundland or something if, Russia attacked. But we were practicing over here to do that. That's all that we did, practice. And then we did a lot of other stuff too,
When you were doing your practice flights, did they tell you where you had to fly, or could you just go out and go wherever you wanted?
About half the time, just go.
So where'd you go?
Byron Center.
And what did you do there?
I went over about Byron.
Yeah. So about, you were buzzing Byron, about how...
I only did that about 3 times.
Well, it seems to be legend around here. I've heard it already. About how high were you flying when you did that?
Well, some information you don't say, but I mean, they thought kind of low. But anyway, I knew I was getting out anyway in 2 years, otherwise you wouldn't do it. Right. And also the head of my squadron in Wright Patterson was Colonel Lane, and I was a wingman in Korea too, so he'd protect me anyway. But it was a good 2 years in Dayton. But a lot of times we get, in the middle of the night, we got scrambled, they call it, for unidentified flying objects. And that was the time that they see them things, people, so we'd go up in there and they vector us to a place up there, and where it wasn't, we never found anything. But it was also good night practice, night flying. Night flying is nice taking off, it's nice flying, but beautiful, but I don't like landing at night. There's too many things that happen.
Did you have to fly at night at all back in Korea, or were all of your missions?
Had some night missions too, yeah. Mainly they were there to, a pilot got shot down, and he was calling on his radio, where he was about, and we had to kind of fly high cover. Well, the planes lower than us would maybe try to pick him up or drop supplies or something like that. Yeah, that happened to him, and that was night flying there too. But boy, I tell you, when it's dark over there. There wasn't electricity, and wow. You didn't hardly know where you were.
Okay. When you were based in Dayton, at that point, did your wife come down and live there with you?
We lived, yeah, she was down there. We lived in Dayton. We lived right in the CCC barracks, yeah. CCC boys had them there, and then they moved them in there, and yeah, we lived there in Dayton for 2 years in the Air Force, yeah.
And what did she do while she was down there?
Well, we had our first child there, yeah, and that's about it. Yeah, it was pretty good duty. Yeah, can't complain. I did get in my travels a lot of instrument training too. And then when I well, I'll tell you later on when I got out how that went. But yeah. But
okay.
Anyway, after yeah.
Well, are there other things that you recall about your time in the service that you haven't plugged in here someplace that would be good to know?
Oh, I put a couple things down here about 10 minutes before I came here.
Okay.
You know what? Told you about depressurization, the Chodo Island.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one time, yeah, I was, every 6 weeks we had got, when I was in Korea, we had to fly back to Japan. They brought us, and we had to bring back a new airplane to replace our losses. They come in on the aircraft carriers, and they'd put them together there. Right. And one time, I took off, and I was just taking off. I got over Tokyo Bay, and the red light came on, and it had all smoke in the cockpit. Boy, if that don't scare you. So I called the power, hey, clear the area I'm landing, no matter what. And I kept around there, and I got smoke, and I opened my cockpit a little bit so I get a little bit of air in there, get the smoke out there. And boy, I came around like that, and I came in, and I landed, couldn't hardly see nothing. Turned out that when they put together the alternator in there, they forgot to tie the wires good. And the wires in there were shortened. Mm-hmm. And it got a red light, red light usually means, blow up, Yeah. And then, oh, by the way, yeah, and then when you bring a plane back from Tokyo to Korea, you put great big wing tanks on. They call them for a lot of gas because of long ways. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't think what they call them again. Big tanks on the wing. Yeah, and then I can't think of the name right now. But then I dropped them too quick with the Tokyo Bay because you can't land with a thing full of gas, it'll blow your tires. Right. Then we got a call from a fisherman in Tokyo Bay. Hey, what are you going on? You just about killed me. You dropped them tanks on my boat. Never forget that. Yeah.
So that message got to you somehow?
What?
I mean, the message actually got to you?
They told me, yeah. Yeah, that the next me, but they're not. I was going to drop them anyway. I didn't even look in the fishing boat in the bay when you got a red light on it. Right. That's one crazy little thing that happened. Another time, one more here. Oh yeah, another time we went with 3 of us. We were flying planes back from Tokyo to Korea, and then we took off. And all of our radio compasses, they showed different. We were up in the cloud, we were above the clouds, and then we just and we didn't know where we were. And we flew and we flew, and we couldn't make out nothing. And then finally, nothing seemed right. So we squawked emergency. Little button back there, you turn it on, and any radar in the area picks you up, and it shows an emergency with one of the planes. And then we called them. We said, "What? We don't know where we're at, and we don't know what's going on." And they said, "Well, you're still over Tokyo yet, or over Japan?" I said, "We can't be. We've been flying 2 hours." They didn't know what jet stream was in them days. Mm-hmm. We got caught in a jet stream. We weren't going to play. Mm-hmm. They said, "We're going to bring you down to Nagoya, and then you can in the morning you can sleep here, and you can get some sleep, and then we'll see what." So they brought us down to the clouds, and then we had to fly close formation, right close by, just like the Thunderbirds do. I did a lot of that too. I was on a drill team there. In fact, I was stationed where the Thunderbirds were in Indian Springs, doing the same thing. All of the I had a drill team. But how did I go? Yeah, and then they let us down on the ground, and we landed. Then we were so thankful that we, as officers, you can commission a Jeep. You can get it. So we got a Jeep, and we said, "Where's that hill where them guys talked to us?" "Oh, that mountain up there." So we went up there in the mountain with our Jeep, and we talked to them guys, and they were so tickled that their job, they finally saved somebody, We had supper with them yet, we spent a few hours, and then we came back. They were just tickled to death. They weren't doing nothing for nothing. Yeah, that was quite a lot of fun.
Okay. You just mentioned in passing here that you were doing drill team flying and things like that. What was the purpose of that?
Well, I had an instructor. He picked 3 of us, and he'd like to I said, "Why did the Thunderbirds do it?" Just please the crowd, I guess. And he said, "We'll do that." And he picked 3 of us. But he could tell which ones had to be. You had to be real, I don't know, kind of. You weren't excitable, and you could fly slow, And we did, in Las Vegas, we had a drill team, and we even landed a few times in Indian Springs, which is 50 miles away from Vegas. That's where Thunderbirds are actually stationed. Yeah, we flew in there, and it was kind of fun. I'm surprised he picked me, but I guess he thought I could fly pretty good, so.
Well, when you were doing it, I mean, were you ever sort of putting on a show or performing for anybody? Or were
No,
you
we
just
didn't.
Doing it?
No, we didn't, no. No, we didn't, no. I was always the wing on the right. I hated the guy in the back. And in the fourth slot, he had his tail was in the jet stream, and he always came back with the tail all black. You know, it was right in, that's how close you're flying, yeah, in the black tail, yeah.
Okay. Have you got anything else on the list there?
Oh, yeah. You're up to, yeah. Oh, yeah, one more thing I'll say. In Korea, every time we went up on mission, we had drop tanks on too. Each one's 120 gallons. And always we went up the drop tanks, and always we dropped them when we got to 40,000 feet, about in the combat zone, because you cannot dogfight with the tanks on. And the people on the ground, they say they grabbed them, you know, it was metal, you know, they can make pans and pots and pans out of them. So, and we had maybe 6 guys, 8 guys at a time in a flight, and they'd all drop at the same time. The leader would say, drop tanks now. Now you can see them all flutter down. They're just, it takes a long time for a tank to get on the ground when you're, you know, here's another thing, if you parachute out at 45,000 feet, it takes you 40 minutes to get the ground with a parachute. That's how high you are. 30,000 feet, it takes you a half hour. Can you imagine that? That's how high you are.
When you were training, did they have you practice parachuting, or it was just?
You know, I wore a parachute all the time, sometimes a seat pack, sometimes a backpack, but I never had to bail out. They never made us, and I'm kind of glad too. But they says, their excuse was, it's there, if you need it, you will, you will bail out and you will pull the parachute, yeah, and that's for sure, yeah. You will do it if you need it.
Okay. Now, when you were finally discharged, then what did you go on and do from there?
After I got out?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then I got these telegrams from, it was a Continental Airline at that time, American Airline, and 3 of them. They got telegrams that said, please come down for interview because you got a good record, you flew jets, and you got instrument training, certified. Say we need pilots because we're transitioning our commercial airplanes now to jets. And I could have had a job just like that. But the wife wanted to come back in Byron. She didn't want to be all over the world, or you know how that goes. And so I said, okay. Then it turned out okay too, because I had a GI Bill. You know, I could go, and I went to Bradley University 2 years, and I went to jewelry school, and then I started a jewelry store in Byron, and I had that for 40 years. That was good for us. Yeah.
How do you think your military experience kind of maybe affected you, either as a person or directions you took in your life after that?
Yeah, you know, I really don't know if it, looking back now, I said, wow, I can't believe it. But I don't know. Personally, I'm a guy that thinks everybody should be in the military for 1 year. Just, you know, it's so good for the discipline. Yeah. You know, it's a funny thing too, when I first went in the basic training in Lackland, the Southern boys, they all had training. They all went to military school, just all of them. You know, they still were fighting the Civil War yet. None of us up here, and they could all march. They know exactly what to do. I couldn't march for nothing. You got out pretty good when you, after a while, you know, but that surprised me. And they were, the Civil War, boy, you talk to them, they're just, a couple of guys who were fought over yet in the basic training. Kid McCampbell, and yeah, they were fighting over, you know, the Civil War yet. A bit fist fight.
During the time that you were in the Air Force, was it getting integrated at all? I mean, were they bringing any black soldiers into either your units or on the bases or things like that, or were things still segregated?
You mean down south?
Well, either south or when you were in Korea, for
Oh,
that matter.
no, there was no segregation, no. I think that was a question, wasn't it?
Well, I was asking, was there still segregation within the military at the time?
I didn't see it.
So,
No, I didn't see it.
So did you have black soldiers serving in
Just
your
had
units,
one
or-
black pilot, just one, yeah.
And what about in the ground crews and support units?
Ground crews, I didn't, there's very few at that time, black, brown, ground crew, very, very few. Because that's been 50 years ago almost in it, yeah. And there wasn't very few in it at that time yet.
Right.
I think it's probably changed now. Yeah. Because the thing, you know, you look at that Kempo too, as the air base where I was, we only had maybe 30 pilots. And then I bet you had that base was probably 5,000 people.
Right.
What a support, people, it takes for 25 pilots. I can't believe it. Yeah. Yeah, what support. Yeah.
All right then. Thank you very much for talking to us. It's been a pleasure.
No, that's good.
All right.